Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is episode 11 of the fall 2019 semester of X's and O's, and it will be the final episode of this semester. So we're happy that you are along with us watching this show here today. We are going to be starting our show as we usually do with some FCS news. We actually have some interesting things to talk about this week.
Yeah, it was.
Unlike last week.
Last week it was kind of like your pedestrian, like, hey, this team beat this team like they were supposed to, and all that sort of stuff. But we got some shockers this week, actually. That word actually makes sense this week.
It does, because you and I went on the road last week and gutted out a 13-10 win, and it was a crazy finish. Not only did you and I take the lead with a short field goal late, but they had to survive a couple potentially debilitating penalties to survive. They had 2 interceptions on SDSU's final drive, taken away by first a pass interference penalty and then a defensive holding penalty. That would have just won them the game there. They had to hold on to their butts for a little bit longer than they thought, but they still ended up getting the stop anyway. SDSU goes home. Typical Brookings fashion, They lose 13-10 in front of 4,000 fans.
They lose the game that matters the most. Classic SDSU.
In front of 4,000 fans too. So that happened.
That's tough. That's a tough look.
You and I is the team in the Missouri Valley meetup that gets to move on. SDSU is not. And then the other big one, Austin Peay against Sacramento State. 42-28 was the final in that. Just based on a whim, I had this to say about Sacramento State in our show a couple weeks ago. I almost like Sacramento State just with, the newness of them, still being, this underdog, this upstart team that no one's really thought of before. I think they're going to ride that momentum, and I think they may even give NDSU a good game.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I just kind of think, with this underdog factor, I think they might ride that all the way to the semifinal.
Yeah.
So, no. Apparently not.
No.
Austin Peay in Sacramento State's home venue ran for nearly 300 yards and threw for over 200, and they put a good show on on the road. They were up 38-14 at the start of the fourth quarter. Austin Peay, from where they were at the start of the decade to where they are now, winning multiple playoff games in one season. Hats off to them, even if it was against a team that had been in the playoffs for just the first time.
I mean, yeah, you got to give them credit where credit's due, honestly.
So, congratulations, Austin Peay. You get to move on to play against Montana State on the road. Good luck. Friday night venue. I don't know if finals would have been done. I guess they would have been done by then. But Friday night in Bozeman,
good luck.
Montana is about as electric of a college town as you can get. So, yeah, good luck to you, Austin Peay. The winner of that one would move on to either play NDSU, who won their game against Nichols 37-13.
Bit of a slow start, but they picked it back up.
Oh, and that was also a weird game in its own right. Either NDSU or Illinois State this Saturday at the Fargo Dome. That will be again for, I think, the 4th year in a row or so. NDSU gets the 11 a.m. kickoff for their quarterfinal game on ESPN.
They're the most marketable FCS team. They're the most marketable FCS team. So ESPN, they love North Dakota State football, so they're going to do their best to market them as much as they possibly can. They
just keep on winning, so why not?
Yeah.
I mean, and with Illinois State being what they are, congratulations. They beat Central Arkansas. I kind of foresaw that, and I think most FCS minds could have foresaw that coming.
Illinois State, they got a pretty decent defense.
They do, and the fact that they feature as well an offense that is mostly ground and pound heavy.
Yeah.
That can translate, as we've said before in the playoffs. James Robinson is electric.
Absolutely.
And NDSU kind of kept him in check the first time that NDSU played against Illinois State in normal. Now coming onto the road in the Fargo Dome, that will be a vastly different environment.
Yeah.
Though I will say, though, NDSU probably has to shore up their run defense.
Absolutely. I was looking at the offensive and defensive rankings earlier in the day, and I saw that Illinois State had the 110th ranked team in terms of total offense.
Ooh.
So, yeah, that's not good.
Well, but at the same time, if they really just feature Robinson, where does that all fall
But
in?
if history repeats itself and NDSU shuts him down again,
Right.
this could be on paper. This looks like a walk in the park. And they shut down James Robinson. It's going to be a walk in the
That's
park.
something to keep in mind, but NDSU did struggle on inside runs against Nichols State last weekend.
Yeah, that is something to keep in mind.
Sure that will be potential. That is at least going to be hammered home. The defensive tackles need to clean up their play in the NDSU defensive meeting rooms. So that's our little outlook on the FCS as well. The other two quarterfinal games that we'll just briefly mention here, James Madison, they put up 66 points on Monmouth at home last weekend. 66 of them things.
I feel like last year was just kind of an anomaly because it was just a weird year for James Madison, and we thought maybe things would be different because they lost their head coach and a lot of their really good players. Turns out that's not the case, and they just had a bad year last year. So they picked up right where they left off. Nothing too crazy right there.
James Madison versus UNI, an unseeded team going into that environment out there at James Madison. Another Friday night kickoff.
Got to keep an eye out for UNI. They're actually
UNI
pretty tough.
has a solid defense. They've only allowed 13 points in 2 games in the playoffs, but it will be interesting, though, having to go on the road for this one against an offense as explosive as James Madison. They're one of the top units in the country. And then the other quarterfinal game, Weber State versus Montana. That's a big one.
Very big one.
Another like night. It's another. This is the ESPN. I think it's on ESPN2. I think the JMU UNI game. Those and then the Weber State Montana. Those will be back to back on the same channel. I think those are on ESPN2.
Okay.
Which is an interesting move, but. Again, it's another night game, and this is going to be more featuring elements because Weber State's out there, and I think Utah. So it gets cold in December in Utah.
Yes.
Probably much less in Virginia.
Yep.
Out where James Madison is. So that'll be, and also Montana put up, I think, 70 points in their last game. Forget who they, no, I don't know who they played. I just saw this moments ago before recording this show. But this is going to be, at least an interesting quarterfinal round.
That could actually be a pretty interesting game. We'll have to see what happens.
Just because of the fact that there are 3 games on Friday night, and then the Saturday slate for the quarterfinals is just NDSU, Illinois State. So NDSU will already know who they will play the next, or when they are playing that game against Illinois State. Let's move off the FCS, though. The other big news in college football last weekend, there were conference championship games, and then subsequently, the college football playoff was finally set. Now we know who's playing who, and as it stands, it's LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, and Oklahoma in order in the top 4. Do you think the committee got it right?
I feel like we've had the ability to question the committee the last couple years with their rankings in the college football playoff, but this year, I think they got 100% right. LSU has been dominant all season. Joe Burrow, I think, will win the Heisman in a landslide. Ohio State, they struggled a little bit early on against Wisconsin, but they came back and won, which is very impressive. But LSU absolutely steamrolled Georgia.
They absolutely did.
There is funny videos that were seen on Twitter of Georgia getting rid of the SEC champion shirts, and then you see Uga without his jersey on walking out of the building to go back to his fancy car and back to wherever he go, back to his hotel room so he can just chill and be a dog. But
he's a dog.
It's a dog. But it's just kind of sad to see because he's leaving the game early, and that's not. You normally don't want your mascot leaving the game early.
That's like the equivalent of like waving the white flag. So one thing I do want to bring into this as well, just with the fact that these are the 4 teams we have, but I felt like I was almost certain that one team would have been different in here, and that was Utah. And I want to play what I said about Utah from last week. If Utah wins, they are in.
Yes, 100%.
I think they are in because
the
loser of the SEC championship game, to me, is out. If Utah wins, at least they are in.
I would love to think that, but there has been some questions about the college football playoff, and they're biased towards the SEC. So we'll have to see what happens. But I think Utah absolutely deserves to get in.
Utah
if
only
they beat
wins
Oregon.
is only in if they win.
That's true.
So as it turned out, what you may not have noticed during the recording of that show, it had not even crossed my mind the fact that maybe Utah could lose. Well, maybe I did say that, but I was like certain that Oregon couldn't beat Utah, right? You know?
Yeah.
That was the prevailing thought in my mind, but as it turned out, Oregon just utterly destroyed Utah in the Pac-12 title game. So as it turns out, Utah is not in.
Mm-hmm.
They lose and are out. But I thought the committee made a good decision by letting the Big 12 champion in.
Yeah, absolutely. Oklahoma played really well against Baylor. Jalen Hurts, he has had a couple games where he's struggled, but he's overall played really well. Is in the Heisman running for a reason, even though, like I said just a little bit ago, that Joe Burrow is going to win it in a landslide because he's been amazing.
I would agree, honestly. I don't know if it's a landslide, but I think Joe Burrow would win it.
He's second in the FBS in passing yards and passing touchdowns.
You never know with these kind of things. I would still agree, though.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean...
Not really much else to say,
I feel like just the first, it was going to be flip-flop between LSU and Ohio State who would get the top spot and whoever...
Right.
And then either those two could flip-flop either way for so long. Clemson basically was a lock for the 3 spot because nobody else in the ACC could compete with them.
Right, so we don't know what Clemson is really like battle-tested-wise. They beat Virginia by a lot in the ACC
Yeah, and then the 4th seed was just going to go to either Big 12 or Pac-12. And since the Pac-12, Oregon had a couple bad losses, so they probably weren't going to get in. And
Oregon
Oklahoma
lost to Utah?
And Auburn at the beginning of the year.
Not Utah. That's what I was mentioning, Auburn.
Auburn.
They lost to Auburn. That's not a bad loss because Auburn's good.
Arizona State, though, they lost.
That's the big one. That's the big one. That's why they're not in. Mm-hmm. So that's really all I think. And also I thought it was interesting as well with LSU going up above Ohio State. The committee determining that their win over Georgia, objectively, I think as well, better than Ohio State's comeback win over Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game.
I think it just showed LSU's dominance. Wisconsin they played well the first half. They still had Jonathan Taylor. He's a great running back.
Yep.
But I think overall, Ohio State, I don't know. It was just like a slow start for them, I think, at the beginning of the game. And
Which no team is immune to.
Yeah, any team can have a slow start. But they bounced back and came back and scored 27 unanswered points in the second half to win.
So I at least agree with the decision to prop LSU up, reward them with getting the 4 seed in the playoff, and let Ohio State play against Clemson. You still want to, at least in my opinion, to have the LSU-Ohio State National Championship. That's
the matchup I want to see.
That's the matchup that most of America, I would think, would want to see, just because they've been the 2 best teams in the country the entire year.
Yeah, 100%. Can't argue with that. And I'm all interested in seeing the rematch between Ohio State and Clemson, because the last time they met in the playoff, it did not end well for Ohio State. They got shut out.
It did not. So that'll be something to look out for in the future. So what do you got right there in front of you here?
What I have in front of me is the list of every college football game. You can't see it even though I'm pointing it at you. Right? Every bowl game,
okay,
yeah.
All right.
Did I say something weird?
You didn't mention that they were bowl games.
Bowl games. These are bowl games.
Right.
You can't really see them when I point them at the screen, but you know what's on there because I told you. There were a couple bowl games that I thought were kind of interesting, though. One of them was a New Year's Six bowl, the Cotton Bowl in Arlington, Texas. Penn State versus Memphis. My question is, why is Penn State in there?
Yeah. I kind of see that, But at the same time, I
know Penn State.
Minnesota they won the head-to-head.
Yeah, Minnesota got the Outback Bowl against Auburn, which is going to be a good matchup. But Minnesota beat Penn State.
But I think still, we talked about this a little bit before our recording here of this show. Minnesota's just, they kind of got, they got dumped down after they lost to Wisconsin, which I thought was a little.
But it was a little extreme. They didn't play well against Wisconsin, but I don't think that it was worth dropping 10 spots.
It was a little extreme to me, at least.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And I think a big reason, Minnesota had an amazing season. Let's get that right.
Right.
But Penn State for so long has been such a notable college football program. And at this current moment, I feel like the committee just wanted to they want to keep a bunch of notable football programs in the New Year's Six because that's what's going to draw.
And they'll travel well.
And they will travel well. Not to say that Minnesota wouldn't travel to the Cotton Bowl, because I think they would.
Mm-hmm.
But
there's nothing really that would back it up.
Yeah.
You know, it's all about pedigree in college football. I get that.
This is Minnesota's most relevant season in over 100 years.
Right.
And I like the matchup against Auburn. I think that'll actually be a pretty good game.
I do too.
The Outback Bowl is nothing to yawn at, but
the biggest
I feel like they deserve to get at the Cotton Bowl at least.
Right, but I still think the biggest thing to maybe think about with that Outback Bowl game, who's going to be the team that gets everybody a bloomin' onion? If it's Minnesota, something to consider.
Something to consider. There was another, back to our talk with teams that had a shot in the playoff, we noticed that Utah got the Alamo Bowl.
Yeah, which I guess makes kind of sense. You know, I've seen Washington State lose in the Pac-12 title game.
I guess.
That. But what didn't make sense, I think you're just about to bring this up, what didn't make sense, they're playing Texas.
Yeah.
They're 7-5.
7-5, which
What?
And the fact that it's basically a home game for Texas because
Exactly.
San Antonio is not even 2 hours away from Austin.
It's just it's like an hour and a half drive down 35.
And I just feel like that's a bit of a slap in the face for a team that was this close to the college football playoff, because we haven't had a Pac-12 team since Washington in 2016, and they got steamrolled by Alabama. Utah probably wouldn't have made it past the first game against whoever they were playing.
Something.
But to make the college football playoff is successful in its own right.
You get like I think $1 million or like multiple $1 million.
Yeah, which is huge for your university.
Yeah. So I mean, the fact though they were right there though and get boat raced by Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game just to play in a bowl game that's a glorified Texas home game.
Yeah.
Come on, man. We're really doing this.
That's kind of disrespectful when you really look at it.
That really angered me when I saw
that. Another bowl game that, as I'm looking at the list, I'm just gonna look at the funny names for bowl games, like the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl.
Yeah.
In El Paso.
Great.
Arizona State versus Florida State. That could actually be somewhat of a decent game.
Okay.
I kind of like, there was that rumor of Deion Sanders becoming the head coach at Florida State, which would be the best.
Cool.
That would be the best thing ever.
That'd be so cool.
Who knows how well he would do as a head coach? We'd have to see if he were to actually get hired. But he would be the best recruiter in college football.
Just because he's
Deion Sanders. Who wouldn't want to have their coach be primetime?
He is Mr. Primetime. Like, come on, that'd be so cool.
Another fun bowl game, the Camping World Bowl, Notre Dame versus Iowa State.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
What a bit of a fall for Notre Dame after making the playoff last year, going undefeated.
Well, yeah,
going from the playoff to the Camping World Bowl, that's kind of significant if you ask me.
Maybe, but in terms of like prestige, I think that's still okay.
Yeah,
You're still getting a Florida bowl game.
It's not the Belk Bowl.
That is true. Okay, that is true.
Yeah. We also got the Cheez-It Bowl at 10:15 p.m. on ESPN.
Yes, nothing.
Washington State versus Air Force.
Nothing can top last year's Cheez-It Bowl, but they can certainly try. Was it TCU versus who in that last year's Cheez-It Bowl? Whatever it was.
I wasn't that big into college football last year for whatever reason.
Oh my gosh, it was so good because it was so bad.
The Quick Lane Bowl, Pitt versus Eastern Michigan.
Oh baby, yeah,
that one's for the degenerate gamblers out there.
That's also kind of a glorified home game because that's in Detroit, is it not?
It's in Detroit.
It's in Detroit, Eastern Michigan. Hello.
You want to talk about glorified bowl games though? Bowl games? How about the Hawaii Bowl?
That's right.
With BYU versus Hawaii.
Yeah, it's literally in Hawaii's home stadium. Okay.
Yeah.
That's always on Christmas Eve, right?
Yeah, it's on Christmas Eve.
All right.
We have something called the Gasparilla Bowl. Marshall versus UCF. I don't. What's the
Congratulations, UCF! You won your national championship 2 years ago. You're now in the Gasparilla Bowl this year.
What's a Gasparilla? Can someone tell me that?
Yeah, let us know down in the comments if you're watching this video on YouTube. What's a Gasparilla?
Oh, the Camellia Bowl? CAMELLIA. I don't know what that is. That's
Isn't that
FIU.
like a kind of flower?
Probably.
Might be a kind of flower.
It's in Alabama. It's FIU versus Arkansas State.
I think it's
yeah.
a flower. I don't know. Don't quote me.
Let's see, what other fun games do we got? Ooh, an actual fun game would be the Citrus Bowl on New Year's Day.
Not just because of its name.
But Michigan, Alabama.
Those are two of the biggest brands in college football.
Absolutely.
I see that.
That's actually a really good game.
Although I think Alabama would win by 20.
Yeah.
Alabama would absolutely win by 20.
Because there needs to be, something's got to change at Michigan. I think I talked about that last week.
Yes,
But something's got to change at Michigan. I don't know what it is, but something's got to change. Because it's not working.
Yep.
It's not working.
Anything else on that big list that we may want to talk about here?
How about the Red Box Bowl?
Oh, that's still a thing?
Illinois versus Cal. We've got the Liberty Bowl. Upset that Liberty's not in it, but whatever. Got K-State versus Navy. Shout out Chris Kleiman.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting one because K-State, they won 8 games this year with Chris Kleiman, and now he gets to scheme.
And he beat Oklahoma.
Yeah, like Oklahoma, the one loss of any team in the playoff was by Chris Kleiman's K-State team. And now Chris Kleiman gets to scheme against a triple option team like he'd been used to doing when he was coach at North Dakota State.
Last one that I find interesting is the Bahamas Bowl, which I think is actually the best bowl here on the board because Charlotte and Buffalo, they get to go to the Bahamas. That's kind of dope.
That's just pretty cool. And nothing much else to that. So that's
all I have.
That's our opinions on the bowl games. If you catch us at a later episode, potentially in Frisco, like we've recorded, if the NDSU Bison make it there,
we will be in Frisco.
We'll not only be in Frisco, but we may be discussing some of those bowl games that we've discussed on this segment. So let's then transition then, as per usual, yet again, the NFL. Week 14, this will be the last time that the two of us will talk in this setting on the NFL and the Vikings. As per usual as well with this season, they've made it usual. They won again 20-7 over the Lions. The defense played really well.
Defense played really well. It was a nice bounce-back win after I'd say a quality loss, but still ultimately a kind of disappointing loss against Seattle, especially when you look at how the defense really played well against the Lions, and it shows how poor they played against Seattle. 444 yards of offense and 34 points given up. But the offense, Kirk Cousins, he didn't have to do much, but he still played pretty well. David Blau did not play well.
Yeah, the game script though for the Vikings. To your point on Cousins, it's like one of those early season games the Vikings had. They didn't have to do a lot.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the running game didn't carry them, I guess, which is different than those other early season games for the Vikings. But still, Kirk Cousins played well, only got sacked once, no turnovers for him.
Yeah.
And the Vikings win. They're now 9-4 and keeping pace with the 10-3 Green Bay Packers, who just narrowly scraped by the Washington Redskins yesterday. Mm-hmm. So that's at least...
It was really, it's kind of described as a game that happened. It was there. It was a game.
Yep.
The Vikings won, and that's all you really need to know.
But the at least one game that was more than just a game yesterday, the 49ers and the Saints.
Yeah, that was an electric game.
Two heavyweight teams in the NFC.
The top two teams in the NFC.
Although one was a wild card team coming in because Seattle had won against the Vikings.
Fair enough. Yeah. But now the games are over and Seattle lost, which I was a little bit annoyed by because I wish they played like that against the Vikings, but that's just because I'm biased. But
that game was really fun, though.
Yeah.
48-45, 48-46, something like that. Yeah. Big, high-scoring game.
Defense was non-existent in that game. But that's okay sometimes because we like offensive showcases as casual fans. And that's what draws the casual fans. Lots of scoring.
But I found it interesting that the Niners gave up that many points with one of the historically best pass defenses of all time. But at the same time, you are going up against Drew Brees.
Yeah. I heard Richard Sherman also went down with an injury. It's not the same Richard Sherman that he was in Seattle, but he also went down with...
He's still been playing super well with that Niners defense this season.
He went down with an injury, so that might have played a role. But still, a very entertaining game.
And then the other big game that I at least wanted to touch on briefly, the Chiefs-Patriots game in Foxborough. The Chiefs got out to had a really good second quarter and rode that the entire way. They beat New England and also snapped the Patriots' NFL long winning streak at home that had been 20-plus games. So now the Vikings at 6-0 currently this season at home. They have the longest home winning streak in the NFL.
The Chiefs played well against the Patriots, but this game wasn't without controversy. There were a lot of questionable calls by the officials. There was one touchdown that was called back because they said I think it was N'Keal Harry was out of bounds, even though he wasn't. Like the pylon cams clearly showed him in bounds.
Okay.
And they negated the touchdown saying he was out of bounds, which a little preposterous, but it's kind of okay because it's the Patriots, and they kind of deserve it because they've been good for a really long time.
Anything else then we want to discuss on for this week in the NFL?
I mean, in terms of past games or the game that's about to happen tonight?
Yeah, sure. We can talk about tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good rivalry game. NFC East, the division's really garbage this year, but Philadelphia versus New York Giants, it's a good rivalry game for the most part. And it's going to feature this man, as we're going to show on our screens here. Yeah, that guy. Eli Manning.
This guy.
He's starting tonight because Daniel Jones is out with an ankle injury. He had a high ankle sprain. Hope he gets better. But we got to show the Manning. Got to show the Manning face.
This is a perfect face.
Because this is. I don't know what's going to happen in the offseason, but I have a really good suspicion that this is going to be his final start as a quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, you wonder.
I think
really wonder at this point.
He's getting up there. His ability has gone down significantly in the last few years. I really think this is his last season and his last start as an NFL quarterback. And it's really shedding a light on the 2004 quarterback class in that draft because Eli has been benched most of the year, and he's coming in for this start week 14 Monday Night Football. Ben Roethlisberger's been out all year, and he's starting to show signs of decline. Phillip Rivers is Phillip Rivers. He's just being Phil.
He's okay.
He's decent career, just never really got anywhere. And he's he's in the twilight of his career too. So within the next couple seasons, you could see that entire 2004 draft class out the window.
Yeah,
which is crazy to see because
unfortunate. Yeah,
Eli has
two Super Bowls with them.
Yeah, Eli has 2 Super Bowls. Big Ben has 2 Super Bowls. Phillip Rivers went to an AFC Championship game and played on a torn ACL, which is kind of cool, but he still lost, which kind of sucked. But overall, this is the swan song for that draft class, and it's kind of sad to see if we're honest.
So that's at least going to wrap up our discussion on the NFL for this episode. But before we go, I want to acknowledge yet again, this is our last episode as a duo, and to put us out in style, I thought it'd be appropriate to show off some of our greatest hits from the last year. Take a look.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first episode of X's and O's in the year 2019. We have some new anchors today. I am Joe Thompson.
Hi, I'm Isak Dinesen. Happy to be here today.
And today we're going to be covering a lot of things football. We want to take a moment to plug this beautiful shirt that Isak is wearing. It's our official Bison Information Network t-shirt, and we're going to be giving some of them away. All you have to do is subscribe to this channel first and foremost, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, subscribe.
But yeah, we're going to shift gears here. There's a new football league that I wasn't even fully aware of until this past Saturday. The Alliance.
The Alliance of American Football.
The AAF.
For switching up the format, we're also back after a little bit of a hiatus. I'm Isak Dinesen alongside Joe Thompson. We're going to be talking about a few things today in the world of sports that we haven't had an opportunity to touch on recently because we've been on hiatus. So
I know you haven't filled out your bracket yet, but do you have some sort of idea of who you think's going to win the whole tournament?
Probably Duke. I mean, if we're going to be honest, I mean, Duke's got a lot of NBA talent.
I think when it comes to Duke, yes, they're going to win, but the scary thing is if Zion gets hurt again, what's going to happen?
It's definitely an issue. That could be an issue. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of X's and O's Reloaded. I'm Isak Dinesen alongside Joe Thompson. We don't have very much time to get into this episode as we're going to be talking about all 30 Major League Baseball teams, given that most teams' opening day is tomorrow. Hopefully all our takes on all these teams, even though we did them pretty quickly, hopefully they were all coherent, and we can look back on this video in October and see how completely right we were.
Or wrong.
Possibly. That's always a possibility as well.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of X's and O's. I'm Joe Thompson along with Isak Dinesen. Later on in the show, we're going to be discussing a bit of the NBA playoffs, which have been a little bit more competitive than we originally thought.
Yeah, much more than we thought, especially than in recent years, too.
Yeah, more on that later on. But first, we're going to go into the playoffs that happened a little bit earlier last week, the NHL playoffs. Take me through the NHL playoffs so far. What have you think of them?
Well, usually between these two leagues that we're going to be discussing today, the NHL playoffs and the NBA playoffs, the NHL usually typically, oh my gosh, I can't even go on. I just dropped my phone. I can't even go on. We got to do that again. My phone's in my lap and it dropped, and I'm worried about it. I'm worried about it. I'm worried about that screen. So we're gonna do that
Stop
over.
What is that? Is it somebody's birthday today?
Oh, shoot.
Oh my goodness.
How about that?
Happy birthday to Isaac. He turns
that?
22 years old today.
Yeah.
Nice strapping young man. Happy birthday, bud.
What was that? What did you
What?
just say?
He called you a nice strapping young man.
What does that mean?
It's a compliment. Just take it.
Huh? What am I strapping?
I'm saying you look handsome.
That's like a term from the 20s. I don't appreciate that.
Wow. All right.
I don't know what that means.
Well, let's just move on then.
I'm
Let's just
too
get into
simple for that.
let's get into
Okay,
it.
then.
Let's get into the playoffs. That was
So
that was. I thought I was trying to be nice, and then
Well,
you just made it really awkward.
know.
All right.
All
You
right.
should have just taken the compliment, man.
I didn't know what you meant, man.
How about just go to the American leagues? Tell me
Yeah,
what's going
so
on.
I had that. So I'm going to talk about the American League. Good right
Nick
now.
Chubb has been one of the few bright spots in Cleveland Town right now, and
Cleveland Town.
Cleveland Town.
Yeah.
I'm full of like just fun little inserts.
Going down to Cleveland Town, everyone.
Like Auburn brought out the punter to obviously what would appear to be to punt the ball away and give Alabama another minute or so to try and at least tie the game.
The problem was Auburn lined up the punter at wide receiver. We talked about with the Houston Astros scandal what is gamesmanship and what is not. This is gamesmanship right here. Prime
Absolutely-
example of perfect gamesmanship.
Absolutely confusing the crap out of your biggest rival.
For those of you who may not be aware, Joe is graduating after this semester, so he will not be around in the same capacity anymore, potentially to do these shows. So that video is just a tribute to the fun times that we've shared on this set, recording this show. It's been an absolute blast, although we did look rather awkward at the start of that video.
Because we honestly didn't know what the heck we were doing.
So it's at least been nice to learn how to do a talk show with you the last 12 months. And I'm glad that we've at least built it into something like this where we can come every Monday, ideally. There was that blip. We've made fun of that extensively on this show where we may not have had time to do that. But at the same time, it's been so much fun to get to do this with you. And also, those of you that may not know as well, we were freshman roommates, so we've been friends for the last 4 years.
We've been joined at the hip, so to say, for a while. Since the day we walked on campus, pretty much.
So, yeah, we have also a pretty funny story that if you ask us about how we got to room with each other, we'd be probably happy to tell you about that as well. So thank you as well. Best of luck to you with wherever you decide to go with your career, and it's been a lot of fun to do this show with you.
Thank you for that. That's really kind of you to say. Best of luck to you as well in your last semester of college. You're graduating in the spring, and best of luck with you wherever your career takes you as well.
Thank you very much. Yes, as you mentioned, I will still be around, but if any of you students that may be watching this, you want to sit in this spot and
think you can
record
take
this
my
show?
spot?
Right. Well,
See if you can hang.
there will be at least some form of process, but I do plan on doing this show in the future, whether with a co-host or without, but it would be nice to have some company. So please feel free to let us know. Drop by the studio if you're interested in being the next co-host of this show. But otherwise, that's going to do it for episode number 11. For the final time, I'm Isaac Dinesen, and
I'm Joe Thompson.
we thank you so much for watching. We will see you soon.